I looked, I wasn't sure what that letter was. So I said I saw an H somewhere. That's not Rabbi had written. I said, oh, must be it. Okay, I'll do it again. Is it very time sensitive?
No.
So I'll do it over
Shabbos, Sunday. Seder. Okay, let's learn. On page Kuf Sameches, Vayom Darkecha Tayva's. On the second side of the page, the second column is base. We just started the first sentence. Let's go over. L'chein Misha Chalila Mispata L'Darkecha Saklipa. Therefore, a person who is fooled and falls for the klipa, for the packaging of that tayva. Remember that the inner light of all that exists is a lakus. And that nakuda of tanug, of pleasure, of tayva, is the or of Hashem that's inside all that exists. But there are all different kinds of packages that Hashem's light comes in. Some are beautiful, some are not, and some are extremely seductive and impure. But the light of Hashem is that which lies always at the inner core of everything that exists. A person can be fooled very easily. The person can grab the external package, that klipa, that is covering, that is hiding the elokus, over its haver, and to do an haver, in order to get to that tanug that he feels, that he's excited by, that he senses is present in that thing or person, whatever it is. This is where we were up to list of Shabbos. But Lamaisa, B'sof Shel Davar, at the end, the person is always disappointed. The reality never matches his imagination anywhere what the imagination is. And he indulged in the klipa, not the Or Hashem, not the Mitzvah Pi Hashem that's inside. That first instant, that first moment when he comes to contact with that nitzotz, that spark of elokus that's there, that's the shorish, the root of that pleasure, that oneg, yesh lo tanug. So then there's this surge of pleasure, of tanug. However, immediately afterwards, hanitzotz nofel v'ne'elam. That nitzotz, that spark, falls and disappears. V'haderech hayechida la'atzliach lahenos be'emes, and the only way to be matzliach, to truly enjoy, ulahasig es hanitzotz es hatanug shabo, and to be able to have that spark and that tanug, that pleasure that is there, he ayidei hayizgabros. When it's something that is forbidden, then the only way to have a true tanug is davke, not by indulging, but davke through his gabros, through the Avoda of Yosef HaTzadik v'yisapik. Yosef HaTzadik v'yisapik. Yosef stayed away. Yosef resisted. By being misgaber and not taking the Isser, but by remaining faithful to and believing in the Dvar Hashem, and that's the Ratzon Hashem at that moment, is Davka to be misgaber. And by doing that, he's connecting to the Or of Hashem, and he's able to feel that Talmud. Vayi Yosef Ish Matzliach. And Yosef is an Ish Matzliach. The whole Hatzlach of Yosef HaTzadik is Hatzlach of his garbage. It's not like he was successful. What kind of success did he have when he was over there in Mitzrayim? His life was pretty miserable. So what's the Hatzlach? We spoke about this many times. That Ish Matzliach, because Hashem was with him. Because he had that choice of indulging in the klipa. He resisted the temptation of the klipa, and instead he remained faithful to Hashem. Vayima Ein. He refused to give in to that klipa, and he remembered that is not going to give him anything more than a momentary pleasure. And he went for that pleasure, which is forever, which is Elokus, and therefore he's an Ish Matzliach. A person in the outside world would say he's the biggest lo yislach. What kind of that's a hatzlach? He had the prettiest woman in the world who was going after him. She was a meshigah for him, and he lost that opportunity. Imagine what they would say on television. He's the biggest lo yislach. He's a total failure. But their friends in his high school class would say, "What happened?" You had anything a person could ever want. The biggest lo yitzlach. And it says about Yosef HaTzadik, Ish Matzliach. So Hatzlacha apparently is not the way the world sees it. The Hatzlacha is in his gavrus, in the V'yis Apeh. That's the Hatzlacha. The Hatzlacha is in the Dveikis Basha, in the Ratzon Hashem. That's the Hatzlacha. And here, that Hatzlacha depended upon on Vayima Ein, and he resisted that. He pulled away from that. Vayonis Vayetza Achutza. That's the biggest Hatzlacha. So the Hatzlacha is not that he was a person that was never tempted. We've spoken about this a lot back with Yosef HaTzadik. It's not that he was never tempted. The Hatzlacha is that he overcame the temptation. That's what it means to be Ish Matzliach. And that's important to know. That the world is filled with all kinds of snakes. Sometimes they're dressed up like Aish Potifera, and other times they're dressed up like different things that to eat or different things to do. And the snake, the nachash, the klipas are everywhere. And it's normal for a person to be tempted. It's normal to be drawn to the klipa because the klipa contains within it that presence of Elokus. But when it's in that package that Kodesh Baruch Hu says, no, this is not for you. Don't do this. This is not allowed. You shouldn't. So then, the Hatzlacha is not that what happened to me, how come I was tempted to do this? The Hatzlacha is that you didn't. That you overcame that. That's the Hatzlacha. The resisting, his gabrus, that's the Hatzlacha. Therefore, Yosef HaTzadik is called the Ish Matzliach. There's nobody else that has such a title in the whole Tanakh except for Yosef HaTzadik, the Ish Matzliach. The whole world says he's a lo yislach. The Torah says he's an Ish Matzliach because Hatzlacha doesn't have to do with getting what you want. Hatzlacha has to do with doing the right thing. And he did the right thing. And he was Misgabra on that Tayva, and that's Hatzlacha. The idea is Gabrus, the Heinish Adam is Gabra, V'lo Yikach es Eser. That's the Hatzlacha of Yosef HaTzadik. Ka'ideshu eino nimshach acher haklipos, elamevin shemashen nirish yesh be'em tanug, ze sheker. Yosef was able to, and any person who's Mazgabra is able to understand that the koach, that this person or thing in his life right now, that hamshacha, that it's drawing him, that's pulling him, and it seems that the klipa is going to give him this tanug, ze sheker. That's the biggest sheker. That's the snake. It's the same thing. Every aveira is a repetition of the chet of Adam and Chava. It's a snake. What's the sheker? It's not true. It promises you the biggest tanug. By Adam and Chava it says v'yisem kelukim. It promises you the biggest tanug. as a sheker. Sheker. V'zeh mevatel as koicha. And the moment that you strengthen your mind and you understand that this is sheker, and this is just a klipa, and this is not going to give you any tanug at all. Beyond that first second, there's not going to be any tanug. And you announce, you declare, doesn't mean to develop, you declare within yourself clearly, this is sheker, this is a lie, this is sheker. Then an amazing thing happens. That by Aish misbatel kacha klipa, then the klipa is misbatel, it's misbatel. I told you once a ma'aseh from the Blinschus when he was a young man. There was a whole thing that happened to him. He was running someplace. He was going someplace in the forest, and there was a woman that came, and he was and there was a moment of temptation. And the Chaysim Lublin, vayimayin, he resisted that, and then the whole thing disappeared. She disappeared. The place that she was in disappeared. Mamish. It was gone. Yeah, sure.
In something usher, the nitzutz eloki is very dim, isn't it? From Tanya says so, it's tied in up.
It's usher.
So why are people more attracted? If we're being attracted, Tayva is really an attraction to the nitzutz eloki, then there should be less attraction to something where the nitzutz is dim.
You see, dim is not. You said two things. You said dim and usher, that it's trapped, like the Tanya says. It doesn't necessarily present itself the way Hakadosh Baruch Hu created this world of Bechira as something which is weak or dim. It is usher. It's held captive. It's trapped, but it's not necessarily dim. The klipa is with the koach of dimyon. We have a way of increasing its significance as well. It becomes something which is more significant, but in and of itself, it's not necessarily. I don't know if the word is dim. It's entrapped. It's held within that metzius that it's in, but it's not necessarily that it's weak or that it's dim. The presence of Hashem is obviously shining much more brightly in the kosel, and like Kever and our tefillin, and our shul, and so on, and our children. But the ability of the nefesh habahamis to magnify, and the koach of dimyon, is so powerful that even though perhaps we could say that it's a weaker, or because it's covered with such klipas. But the power of imagination is extraordinary, and the attractiveness is extraordinary. It changes the reality of what you're in.
We're really being drawn to the klipa. I mean,
yeah.
Because he says we're drawn to the.
Well, you're drawn to the elokus. You're drawn to the elokus, but what I'm saying is the attractiveness of the klipa. Not that the elokus is there, but then the way when it's enclosed in that klipa, the klipa is misrepresenting that tanug, and it's very very and then together with one's imagination, it's very strong. It's very powerful. It's very very powerful.
The fact that it's usher makes it even more attractive. It has the inyan of being, something.
Well, then it's ma'im genuvim. It's what you can't have. It's what you can't have. That generates much more dimyon. The knowledge that you can't have this also magnifies its significance and its power of attraction, because it's forbidden to you. And when something is forbidden, then it's ma'im genuvim. So there are many things that are at work that cause a misrepresentation or magnification of the significance of the klipa, But the root and the source of that attraction is always a Elokus. It's just the mind and the games and so on. And the moment that the game is over, so then it's seen for what it is. It's sheker, nothing.
Rabbi, isn't this physical pleasure versus spiritual pleasure? It's a real physical pleasure. So I don't understand how he keeps saying klipas and they're fake and they're false. It's not.
No, you have the physical. The physical pleasure. The physical pleasure is rooted in the spiritual pleasure, or of Hashem, and the physical pleasure, however, because it's enclosed in the klipa, the physical pleasure is just for a moment. It's very brief, and afterwards, like we spoke about last week, the person feels ugly and dirty, unless it's a person that has lost his connection to God. But a godly person, after he does something that's usher, and he indulges in the klipa, looking for that tanug, if he's a godly person, if he's still connected to Hashem Yisbarach, then the pleasure he has the physical pleasure. He enjoyed that which he ate, or he enjoyed whatever that indulgence was, that pleasure. But then a moment later, he feels low and dirty or disgusting. Whereas somebody who's not connected to Elokus at all, he just feels great. He wants more of that pleasure. It's really something that you could tell after the moment of experiencing the physical pleasure. When that passes, that moment passes, what are you left with? Are you left with a feeling of fullness, or are you left with a feeling of emptiness? A person whose entire life is klipa, he's left with a feeling of excitement and fullness. A person whose entire life is a lukus is left with a feeling of emptiness. Nothing. So it is physical versus spiritual. Of course it is. You're right. So he says, "B'zeh mevatel es koicha, ki machris shehem sheker." He's mevatel the klipa by being machris, by proclaiming this klipa sheker. That's not the oneg that's here. That's not the shorish of what I'm attracted to. And then an amazing thing happens. The klipa falls away. The klipa falls away because the whole thing is stam sheker. The klipa just disappears, and then the Yosef in this story, whoever that Yosef is, me or you, that Yosef then is able to absorb that nitzotz of Elokus, that Elokus that is now free. He is the one that has freed this nitzotz of Elokus by rejecting, by resisting the klipa. The klipa disappears, and the Elokus is absorbed by the tzaddik that said lo, that said no, by Yosef. And you have a Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik became Yosef HaTzadik, as the Zohar Kodesh says, with that itapkut, with that resistance, with that miyun, with that vayimoin, he became Yosef HaTzadik. The klipa falls, and then the person is mizdabik to the lakus, and the result of that is, as we'll see in a moment, the result of that is a tremendous tanug, a deep spiritual pleasure that a person who overcame temptation feels. There's that tremendous feeling of pleasure of being an ish matzliach. Again, this is felt by a person of God, an ish elokim. That feeling of intense pleasure, not that I'm a loser, my friend said, what a loser. No. You feel a tremendous atzlacha. That you're ish matzliach. Not, I can't believe I missed that opportunity. Not that, I regret. If only I would have done that aveir. If only I would have indulged. Just the opposite. The person feels that he's the biggest ish matzliach. He feels a tanig of elikus because he was able now to take that nitzotz of elikus, that lost princess that was trapped in the klip of Lotov, and he was able to liberate that nitzotz of elikus, to liberate, and it's his. And that kinyan, that acquisition of elikus, is what gives the person who resisted that temptation a feeling of tam, a feeling of pleasure, because now he's actually retrieved, saved, rescued that elokus inside of the klippus, and he feels great. He feels just, let's look a little bit more. He feels great. And Yitzhak he's a freedom fighter. Not that we go looking for these kind of fights, right? Have to be careful. There wasn't a vote like that by tzaddikim, but that's very dangerous. We don't do that. Just if it comes your way. And he was able to free that elokus. Uba el misha hitzia. Uba el misha hitzia. And then it's acquired by the one who rescued it. We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's just turn the page. Let's finish. L'chein, therefore, Talmid achrei his gabrus, always after his gabrus, after being vayonas v'yetz achutze, Yosef Atzadik, vayonas v'yetz achutze, after resisting, Talmid achrei his gabrus, margishim tov. It's a good feeling. Margishim tov. Even if it's for a klipas nagel, let's say, tonight, you're sitting there and you're learning tonight, it's a long Friday night, and you're sitting there with an Aimer Melech or whatever you're enjoying, and the mezainis is sitting there on the table, and there's a knife next to the mezainis, and you already had a kibbutz, and you already had the shiur of mezainis by dessert, and you haven't been feeling so great lately about your weight, and also the repercussions of having that, and you look at the Naimer Malach, you look at the cake, you look at the Naimer Malach, you look at the cake. That and we're not talking about it's not usher, it's mutter. But you would prefer to resist that. So a klipa snog, of course, is different than a klipa tmeya. But still, if you're able not to have it, you go and you put it someplace, you call down somebody to hide it somewhere, so you shouldn't know where it is, and you resist that, so then zetov. The vayimoim, when it comes to an iser, the feeling of tanig is strong. But even by something that's mutter, it's a klipas naiga, there's a feeling of tov. Tamid, always. Achri is garbus, magishim tov. Or magishim simcha v'tanig. Simcha and tanig. Va'af shirigei hes garbus atzmeim lefamim kashim. Even though the moment of overcoming, the moment of resisting, could be very difficult, could be torture. The resisting could be torture. Not to go to that place on the computer. Whatever it is, on the phone. Kayetza Moshe, because it's a very strong pull. If the person thinks, there has to be that contemplation and that clarity. Sheker. Umatzliach lezgaber. This is going to give me a moment of pleasure and much more pain, emptiness, aggravation, and so on. It's going to take me further and further away from who I am. and from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Umatzliach das Gaber, as achakach umargish tanug nifli, he feels a gewaltige tanug. He dafka idei his gabers. Dafka because of his gabers. Ha'odem mekabelas nitzites, the person is able to absorb, to acquire that nitzites of Elokus, and that's the shorish, that's the root of tanug, that's the source of tanug. Umisaneg. And he's able to have that tanug. Therefore, Yosef HaTzadik was not a person who didn't enjoy his life. He's an Ish Matzliach. Those who were against Torah mitzvahs, talking about Jews, did everything they could to try to portray an observant Jew as a lo yutzlach, as somebody whose life is boring and is boring and lifeless. It's the whole Indian of Yevanim Nikbetzu Alai as Abi Mechashmanim is whether it's a Yevani, an actual Greek, or it's a Hellenist, whatever it is at that time. But the Indian of Chanukah, the Yontiv that we have such a tanuk from the Yontiv of Chanukah. The whole Indian of Chanukah is that koyach of his apkus and his gabras, of Rabbi biad matim, Masat Gibron biad chaloshim, and so on and so forth. But that's the whole koyach of tanuk, the simcha, of being able to resist and overcome that temptation to slip into that world of chitzonius, of the klipas, because that's what Yavin was. Yavin's chitzonius, it's klipas. They weren't trying to kill us. That was not their Indian, was to kill. The Indian of Yavin is Yafta Lakim Liyafis. Okay, yeah. Yavin is very pretty, beauty, temptation. The world of Yavin is a world that's very, very attractive. It's very tempting. It's very beautiful. But that beauty of Yavin is, in truth, it's only when it's v'yishkan ba'ohel Hashem. It's only when it's used l'shem shamayim. When you connect to the Elokus. But if you fall for the external beauty of Yefes, Cham is Shem Cham and Yefes. Shem is Kedusha. Cham is Poshet evil. And Yefes is that klipa of Yavan, where there is an external beauty, and there is something there that's and there's a strong attraction to that Elokus of Yafta Lukim Liyafes. And the Nitzachon of Chanukah is over that klipa of Yafta Lukim Liyafes, of that Yofi, of external beauty that seems to promise the person all kinds of pleasure. And we fell for it. At the time of Chanukah, it was a terrible time of giving in to that koch of that klipa of Yavan. And the simcha of Chanukah is the simcha of being magibir, the pnimius over the chitzonius, of recognizing and believing in pnimius, and with that belief in pnimius, being able to connect to pnimius and to resist the temptation of the chitzonius. That's Chanukah. Chanukah is not so much as Tov and Ra. The Yontiv of Chanukah is a Yontiv of pnimius versus chitzonius. It's of Kodesh versus Chol. That's really more the Yontiv of Chanukah. Purim is something else. But Chanukah is the milchama between Kodesh and Chol. And the klipa of Chol can come in such a way where it's not also. It's not also. Something which is very, very alluring and very attractive. Who says it's also? It's not also. You look at our kosher magazines now and how everything is made with the most attractive advertisements. I'm not talking about the advertising, some, tzedakah. Even then, it's all using strange things. But the packaging of the kosher foods, and the guy standing there, the butcher standing there with a piece of meat, and all the other things that are being done to try to bring the person. It's all chitzonius. It's all the avoda of Yovan. So if you look at the Chanukah editions of all the magazines, they're all coming out now, I'm sure. And you look at the Chanukah editions, there'll be 100 pages of advertisements. It's all the magazine is celebrating Chanukah, but the advertisements are all coming straight from Yovan. I shouldn't say all. Whatever you show some little Chassidish kid, or maybe it doesn't even exist because they can do everything with the cameras now. And he's got they made him like greasy little payas, and they dress him up like more fashionably. They're even selling streimels like that. If you see what's going on in these magazines, you look. I'm not blaming the owners of the magazines; they're trying to make a living. I have no tightness against any of these people, but you look at the way that look what a streimel is. Look, they're made from a streimel. They're made from a chassidish levush. Who ever heard of such a thing? Who ever heard of advertising? When I was growing up, if you wanted to buy a bekesha, because you were able to find a place in Williamsburg and Bar Park where you could buy it. There are advertisements, and they get some Chassidish model. Or again, I don't know if he really exists. It could be just a picture they made. But you get some guy. It's hard to believe. They get some Chassidish guy, and like one of these, like some model in an Italian fashion magazine, some Chassidish guy with a shrine that's 4 feet tall, and some Bekish that has it says the latest import from so and so for a Chassidish levush. You might as well be an advertiser for a toga, for something. You can dress them up like from Mamish. It's all Greek advertising. It's all klippas. It's all klippas. They were able to make a Yiddish levush. The whole tachlis of Yiddish levush is that it should be able to be something that increases the sense of the pnimius of Shabbos and the pnimius of an Avodah Hashem. And how it's just a way of strengthening the attraction of the klippas, that to take something from that originates in the world of kedusha and to be malbashit in the levushim of yafta lakim liyafes of yafes, of that external yofi. There was ever supposed to be such a thing. That's what it was. That's what it means to wear a chassidish levush. That it used to be something that a person felt a sense of pnimius when you dressed a certain way. So stam is another fashion. It's also chitzonius. This is the meaning of Chanukah. Chanukah is pnimius versus chitzonius. Everything's kosher. Remember that the Yevonim didn't destroy the Beis HaMikdash, they machal the Beis HaMikdash. They made something kodesh into something which is chol. They made a bekesha into a fashion statement. They made a streimel. They made a sheitel, a hair covering into something which is a fashion thing. It was bo pritzim v'chililuha, to take something that's kodesh and to make it into something that's chol. To take a streimel and to make it, which is niniv kedusha. I'm not saying it's tefillin, of course. But it's levush of Shabbos, of Yontif, and to make it into something which is chol, which is silly, which is fashion, Paris. That's the meaning of Yevonim nikbetzu alai. Upartzu chaymes migdalai. They didn't destroy Beis HaMikdash. They machal the Beis HaMikdash. They is there a word profane? Did you make it into a verb? Yeah. It's machal. They took something that's kodesh and they made it into chol. And then all the so you take something that has such kedusha and you present it in a way of chol. They'll make pictures to advertise. They'll make pictures of phony pictures of people sitting around the Shabbos table and looking at this food that they're advertising. Kilo, it's some it's an esrog or something, and they have them looking at a piece of cake like it's an esrog, and so all the Yevonim nikbetzu alai, all of it, all his yavnus, the whole thing is Chanukah is the simcha of pnimius, of chitzonius. And it's a gewaltige simcha of pneumius, the oil pneumius. And Chanukah is saying to be an ish pnimi, to be anshe pnimius, to be people of pnimius, of depth, of meaning, of elokus, and even in Yiddishkeit, your whole learning could be a learning that's without Hashem Baruch, and your whole learning of Torah is chitzonius. You learn Torah like a Greek, like it's something which is just exciting and interesting, and it's fun and it's intellectual. That's without Hashem's Baruch, without the without the pnimis. So even Torah, you can make it to something which is chol. You talk to people; they can talk to you in lomdus and learning, and there isn't a shemetz of pnimis in their learning. The whole thing is dumb. You could be talking to Plato or Aristotle, except he's not smart like that. And that they're arguing over what? They're arguing over a piece of Torah Hashem, but without Hashem's Baruch, without the pnimius, without the art. And that's why the anshe chitzonius, even if they're scholarly, they make fun of the anshe pnimius. They look down on the anshe pnimius. This is all the Indian of Yovan. They make fun because it's the Indian of Chol trying to make fun of Kedusha. So you have that even in the world of Torah. That you have people that they're smart and they make fun of people who are Yirei Shamayim or Yeshamayim or the Anshe Pnimius. They'll make fun of the Anshe Pnimius. They look down on the Anshe Pnimius. And an Ish Pnimi Kilu he's not like me. I'm such a chush of a person. I said I know how to say a fancy piece of lomdus, but there's no Rebbeinu Shalom. If there's no Rebbeinu Shalom, it's Yevanim Nikbetzualai. It's Ma'astam. It's Yovan. It's Yovan in the levush of Torah, which is very, very, very dangerous because there's nothing that's more attractive and alluring than a shtickle Torah, as it should be, as it is. There's so much elokus in a shtickle Torah. So, but that person can learn Torah like a Yevani instead of a Yehudi. He learns like a Yevani. The Indian of Chanukah, is Kodesh overcoming Chol. Is the pnimius overcoming the chitzonius. And therefore, those who are Chanukah people, they recognize the internal beauty. They recognize the pnimius. They don't go for the advertisements. So if there's a picture, if some family gave their kid to be photographed for some ISIS company, so that now the whole neighborhood, they have nachas because the whole neighborhood is able to see their enikel or their kid. It's the cutest kid in the whole neighborhood, smiling with some new ices in his mouth, a kosher ices in his mouth. If you see the beauty, the chayim of that child, as a Jewish child, that despite the mistakes that his parents are making with him, he's a beautiful Jewish child. So then you're Chanukah. If you get lost into some advertisement, so then you've lost the chayim of Chanukah. The chayim of Chanukah is the beauty of Chanukah is pnimius. But now they want Chanukah to compete with the Goyish holidays. So therefore everything has to be packaged. It's about how big the presents are, how exciting the gifts are, the kind of wrapping everything comes in. It's all. So you're making a yontiv of Chanukah, and you're celebrating the victory of pnimius over chitzonius in the most chitzoniistic way. Think of the irony of this. You follow what I'm saying? Which is sheker achein. I know that you. I got it. But I'll call you in a minute. Sheker achein. It's sheker achein. And Chanukah is the meaning of chein pnimi, not chein chitzoni. The chein of chitzoni is sheker. It's sheker achein. But this is what's remarkable is that dvarim shepkedusha. Even look at things nowadays. They make a film bottle, big for talis and film. It's a whole production. So you could say that it's no mitzvah. It's to beautify the mitzvah, and if the person taka feels that he's beautifying the mitzvah by having such an elaborate kind of a thing with his. To put his tefillin and talis and whatever it is, it's all advertising. and that world of Yovan has taken over in such a way that in order for Moshe to be able to make money, they have to have having a wine and cheese party, Motzei Shabbos, Parshas Vayeshev, Parsha Erev Chanukah of Yosef HaTzadik. We're making a wine and cheese party. It's a Greek party. Everybody's going to start saying, "What are you talking about? Why are you saying that? This is to raise money for tzedakah." That we've come to such a thing that we have to be, in order to get money for tzedakah, we have to make all these things. We have to make all these games with all the levushim of Yovan to make a yofi in chitzonius, that there should be a yofi in chitzonius. And now, in order for a woman to be tznius, in order to dress tznius, like she has to feel that she's wearing the most beautiful, elaborate covering. All of these things are just the opposite of what it means to be a yid. It's not awesome, but it's chol. The whole unit of being tsanua is from the world of pnimius, right? That this woman should be connected to a place of pnimius. That's the whole inyan of being tsanua. For a man and a woman, is to connect to that nekuda pnimius. But now, if you want to be a successful sheitel macher, you have to also find some model that looks as least Jewish as you could find, and to put up with a sheitel that comes down to the floor, and try to make this girl look like she's face like Aish's Potiphar. And they can already advertise. You too can look like Aish's Potiphar. And all of this is to do what? For the tznius of covering your hair. You can also be Aish's Potiphar, and you're going to have the happiest Yosef in the world. Yosef will not be able to resist you. Back in Mitzrayim, she did not have this sheitel. If she would have had our sheitel, she would have won. You too can win if you will buy our sheitel. And then they put up pictures of a sheitlach, which the whole idea of a sheitel is to be a person who's a pneumistic person. Not that Hashem's Baruch doesn't want the girls to look nice, but I don't have to explain to you what's going on. The whole thing is to take the chitzonius and the clothing and everything is all to market it in such a way. Keilu, this is sanua, and the whole thing is Yovan Mamish, is Greece. But it's being advertised as this is how you can become a person that's sanua. Newcomers, people who are never from, and I've had these conversations with some of them over the years. They look at this as the most bizarre thing in the world.
It's all about money.
For the people, I know the people who are making the money, but I'm talking about the people who fall for it. We all know this is kesef. But the people who fall for it. But you see that this nakuda of chol, how dangerous it is when it infiltrates into the world of kedusha, it's unbelievable. And I've had this conversation with Bali Tshuva that they because they're outside, they're able to look at this in a pure way because they were in that world, and then they came into the world of Yiddishkeit looking for what? For panemius. They're looking for that or panemi. And then they see us marching around with these ridiculous sheitels and shtreimels and carrying on with all of our stuff, and they just shake their heads and say, I had to become frum to go for this stuff. I had the original hair. I don't have to have fake hair or some hair that they cut off for some Indian lady or something. I have the original hair. I wasn't frum. I wasn't religious. I had real hair. I had someone's original hair. And now I got to settle for some phony hair that cost $5,000 for this lady not to buy. Why? Because she wants to be tzanua. And her husband's proud that he's married to somebody who's an isha tzanua. The whole thing is a bilbulim beyond belief. But the olim, they don't explain this. It's not taught. And then it just comes out like all these milchamas and But this is what Chanukah is all about. Chanukah is not against Isser. Chanukah is against Chol. Not against. It's being misgaber and that nekuda chol, especially chol that is infiltrated into the Beis Hamikdash. Bo pritzim v'chiluha. The machal of the Beis Hamikdash. They didn't destroy it. The Yevanim wanted shuls to be temples. Understand? They didn't want to burn down shuls. That's something else. That's the other gullies. Edom likes to burn down shuls, but Yavin doesn't want to make Kristallnacht. Yavin wants to have temples instead of shtibelach. You understand? To have a temple instead of a shul. Yavin doesn't want to say that a Jew can't daven, but Yavin wants to make sure that when a Jew davens, it's cold. He doesn't have any cheshik for davening. It's cerebral. What's the pshat in Ashrei? That's Yavin. Not the Ashrei of connecting to the Nitzoytzev Elokus and Dveikis Bashem. It's what is the meaning of this? You know, how do we analyze this Ashrei? You know, what's the grammar, the syntax? Not where's HaKadosh Baruch Hu in all of this. Where's HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Shreimlich and the Sheidlich? Where's HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That's not. Yavin wants you to get lost by the klipa. So by the yofi, by the external beauty. David, what is it you were trying to?
When could you recognize that it's the right way and you're taking the physical world and you're actually elevating it? When is too much beauty, too much beauty? Sometimes an extra sitter or a beautiful sitter, oh, beautiful shul. How could you tell when you're taking the physical world and
you have to daven? We should always be zeicher to make mistakes with our talusbergers and with our shuls. Hashem Yisbarach has nachas when we make beautiful shuls and we have beautiful chavtzei mitzvah, tefillin, alulav and esrog. The only way that a person knows is by his avodas Hashem, whether he's doing things to Shem Shemayim. But it's certainly
there is such a thing as taking the physical world and using it for holy purposes.
What do you mean? That's all we're talking about. This whole sefer. Of course, there is such a thing. That's the tachlis of our avoda, of being in this world. Of course, there is such a thing. But when it's not done with that purpose, l'shem shemaim, it's not done properly, then it's all that I was just talking about. And it's just giving it to the klipa of Yavin, just buying it to the klipa of Yavin.
But is there a good yardstick? Because it's easy to look around.
There's
There's
no exact yardstick for such a thing. You remember? Do you ever hear of something called common sense?
It's not so common anymore. We know.
Have you heard of such a thing? A lot of it is common sense. It's just common sense. A person of kedusha has over the years develops a chush, a feeling. So when you say yardstick, that also comes from Yavin, that word. That's also how the Yavanim talk, yardstick. It's a chush, it's a hergish, it's a feeling that a Jew has. I've spoken that many, many times. It's a feeling that a Jew has that this is not right. It's a feeling. Do you have a yardstick? How tall can a shtreimel be? So somebody comes out with a sefer that says the halach is a shtreimel can only be half a foot or a foot. It's a chush that a person has. That when you look at this, you feel this is not what the Baal Shem Tov was talking about. It's a chush. Can you be wrong? Yeah. No, there's no yardstick. There's a chush that this is not right. And a Jew has to, a person of kedusha has to, over time, develops a sense of kedusha and a feeling for what's Kodesh and a feeling what's not. You can't always say that there's a way to measure this empirically. Is this or isn't it? It's a chush that a person has. You know, you could either, you could stand by, you could go to a simcha and you could see the kind of the way that things are being done with the food and everything else. And if you're an ish pnimi, you look at this and you feel, not to God forbid that on people, chas v'shalom, but on the matzah, you could feel that this is Yevanim nikbetzu alai. This is not a victory of Chanukah. It's not Chanukah. It's not Chanukah. It's the opposite of Chanukah. That you have the kind of food and the way it's done and everything. That's not. You have a feeling that this is not an ish pnimi, a person of pnimius has this extra sense to feel this is pasness. This is not nice. This is not what God wanted. This is not what Hashem meant when He gave us the Torah at Sinai. This whole this whole business. It's not what he meant. You have to prove it. If you have to prove it already, it's not good. You understand? If you have to prove this to somebody, it means he doesn't get it, and don't waste your time. That's why everything I just said now about all these advertisements, people, Anshe Chitzonius that hear this stuff, they just think this is crazy. This crazy stuff. This stupid stuff. What are you talking about? This is all. Everything here is glab kosher. What's the matter with doing that? What's wrong? Everything. They wouldn't even hear what we're talking about. They would look at this like it's insane. Because you can't tell an Ish Chitzoni that this is all Chitzonis. Because since he's an Ish Chitzoni, he hears your words in the way of Chitzonis. And he says, you're saying, here, but that's what you're saying. No, just be quiet. I don't care. You can't even talk to him. He doesn't have a chush like that. It's like you go over to some guy, he's trying to show off that he's the smartest guy in the Shiur, and you go over to him and you say, tell me something, my friend. Did you once think of God today? In all of your learning, did you once think of God? He'll make the biggest chayzik of you, the biggest loser. Oh, yeah. Like you're a loser. He doesn't understand the language of Pnimius. He doesn't understand the seichel of Pnimius. This is the Indian of Chanukah, the Nakud of Chanukah. All right, let's go down.
That's what the Rabbi is trying to.
Huh?
As far as the yardstick, we learned in the Rabbi's farm. That's exactly how he tried to put it in the terms that we can understand.
Yeah. So a more understandable context.
Yeah.